Welcome to another episode of the Don't Screw Up Your Kids podcast. I am Kalisha Washington. I'm super excited about this conversation we're about to have. I have my friend Annie, who I've known for several years. We met each other when we were teaching. We were helping to train teachers together for Teach for America, and we stayed connected on social media for years. But this is a story that is so near and dear to my heart. She is, as you will see, a white woman who raised a young Black man who's, almost 18. Mind blown just with that. But to know that I wanted her to come and talk about some of the struggles she might have faced. I see her going to bat for her son all the time. And for anyone who may need some help with, like, how do I raise my kids in an environment where there are differences, where there is diversity, where some people around them don't look like them, even if it's not the same exact situation, raising your kids in environments where the people around them may be different. That's a conversation that we all need to have. So go ahead and welcome to the Don't Screw Up Your Kids podcast. Annie, I don't want to mess up your last name. Ranking?
You got it. That's it.
Okay. So go ahead and tell us a little bit about what you do and then how your experience has been.
Yeah. So professionally, I work at a nonprofit. I'm one of the leaders at a nonprofit. So I'm located in Illinois. And like Kalisha said, we met through Teach for America. And it was probably almost 18 years ago because we met and I was pregnant and no one knew. I probably knew, but and my son just turned 17. So that's me professionally. But as a mom, I gave birth to a biracial son. So my first husband, who is now my ex-husband, is a Black man. And I gave birth and named my son a non-traditional name in the U.S. It is actually one of the most common names around the world, but Ahmad, we pronounce it very Western, Ahmad. When people meet him who actually speak Arabic, they pronounce it differently. But since then, I've divorced my husband at the time, and now I'm married to a white man, and we've been married for almost 13 years. And about 10 or 11 years ago, he officially adopted my son. So my son is a 17-year-old who has grown his whole life in a home with two white parents, white grandparents, and kind of figuring out what it means to be a Black man in America when I don't have that experience.
Yeah. One thing that I love is that you can always tell people who are comfortable being around people from different races because they don't have a problem saying Black and white.
Yes.
And I always notice that you can tell the people who are a little hesitant and uncomfortable because they're like African American and they're afraid to say I'm white and he's Black. But right. I appreciate the fact that you are open and free. And because you've been around so many people of different backgrounds, you don't have a hard time talking about the differences.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think that has been something that I have very consciously done his whole life. So although he is no longer legally connected to his biological dad, we still are very connected to his family, who's from the Chicago area. And so we call it his Black family, right? So we're going to go see your Black family in Chicago. Again, they have blood ties, but no legal ties. But keeping that connection is really important. And so he's never known a time where he doesn't know both sides of him, which I think is super, super important that he understands, like, we look identical other than you have dark skin and I have light skin, but that he's still connected to a side of his family and can see his life would have been much different if he grew up in Chicago compared to where we live. But he can respect that and loves to know that family.
Yeah. You guys have the same exact face. I was like, oh no, she gave birth to this baby by herself. Yeah. Literally, if it wasn't for the skin, like this whole thing, I was like, oh, that was just an implantation.
Yep.
One face to the other. Wow. What are some of the challenges you may have faced or he may have faced just growing up being you can clearly look at him and see that he is biracial. And then when there was the period of time where it was you and him, and I don't know if you have any experiences with
Absolutely. That. Yeah. So racism, very clearly racism. And so in experiencing racism with him, so I very vividly remember we were at a museum and he was probably the only child with darker skin, and he was kind of playing with this thing, and another little white kid came over and started playing, and the mother was like yelling at Ahmad, and I walked up and was like, hey, can I help you with something? And her whole demeanor changed when she realized that his mom was a white woman. And that was the first moment, and I was like, okay, I'm going to fight for him the rest of his life. And so that really kind of, I mean, I knew I would have to, but that was like an aha moment for me. Like, you thought that he had a Black mom because of his skin, and you didn't realize this white woman was going to come up and say, what's happening? That's my son. Yeah. Stop talking to him that way. And then just challenges, hair. Hair has always been a challenge. We finally have figured it out. He has locks now. He's been on his lock journey for almost 3 years, and they're awesome. I learned a lot about locks. He has coarser hair, but not as coarse as, if he was 100% Black. And so between his lock appointments, I figured out how to, retwist them, and I figured out how to do interlocking, and I figured out how to do a lot of that to keep it on point before his appointments. And so kind of figuring that out. But I wash my hair every day. You cannot wash his hair every day. That's one of the big, like just figuring some of that stuff out. And then finding my village. So I think one of the biggest things that people don't understand is that you can't go into, I never went into like a Black church or went into a place where majority Black people are and said, hey, I need your help. I consciously have friends who I am very, very close to, and I never started our relationship like, hey, I need your help with him. But through our friendship, they have become like his Black mamas, right? Like, he had really dry skin for a while. And one of my really close friends, who has kind of taken him under her wing as like one of his Black mamas, was like, put him on the phone. I'm going to tell him how to grease himself up because he cannot go to school looking that way. And like, to me, I was like, I can have that conversation, but it comes out differently from me. So really finding my village to help with some of those areas that, like, I can tell you to put lotion on, but I can't really tell you how or why or anything.
That is so important to have the people that but you've built those relationships with people from different backgrounds so that they can comfortably say, hey, tell your kid put some lotion on, or you can go to them and say, hey, can you have this conversation with him? But if you hadn't built those relationships, and the problem in America is that most times people haven't built those relationships outside of their own circle and outside of their own demographics. But because you had built those relationships prior, you could then go to those folks and say, hey, I need your help with this.
Right. Yeah, and I think knowing that I'm coming at it from a friend, I'm not coming at it from a white person saying, hey, Black person, tell me all of what you can tell me. No. Like we are beyond that. We are actually friends. I just need a little help. Right. Like, and so I think that that's where a lot of white people get it wrong. Don't just go up to people who may, if you have adopted kids or biological kids that you that don't necessarily share your race, don't just go and take. Like, actually build something and build that village, because that's really, really important.
Now, when did you start having conversations with Ahmad about how he's different and how people might treat him? Or did y'all have that conversation?
We always have. We've had it since he could talk. So he has a majority white friends. We usually live in majority white neighborhoods. And from the time that he could start getting toys, I've said to him, you cannot take Nerf guns outside. I don't care, like, your friends are going to have Nerf guns. Your friends are going to have all of this stuff. You absolutely cannot take those outside. When he started driving, I had to have a conversation with a lot of his friends. You can act a certain way, but he can't. And so you've got to make sure you have his back. If you ever get pulled over or anything, you have got to realize that he is your best friend, but he is different and people see him differently. And so we've never shied away from those conversations because I have that protective mama bear. Like, I know how society sees you. I know you are the sweetest, most gentle person, but other people don't. They see you as a almost 6 foot guy with dreadlocks down his back. Like,
crazy, almost 6 feet.
I know.
And you're like little mama.
I know.
Wow. Yeah, and that plays a part in it as well. is just how physically he may be towering over people who are going to then take that as an offense, even if he's not. And he seems from social media just a gentle sweetheart.
He is, yes.
But people don't always see you that way when they don't know you, and they prejudge.
Absolutely. And like, just prejudge of what he may or may not do, right? In Illinois, marijuana is legal. He's obviously not old enough to smoke, but like people are going to prejudge because you look very Rasta. You're going to be prejudged. And so just making sure he's always kind of aware of that. And he'll come up, he'll bring things to me and be like, hey, this happened. And I'll be like, that's racism. What you just experienced is racism. Like, let's talk through this. Because sometimes I think he's a little like, what was that? Like, they said this, is this? And so just helping him identify sometimes is part of that conversation.
Yeah. I mean, I've had those moments myself where I was like,
wait a minute.
Is that racism?
Right.
But then people will say you're playing the race card, and that's the accusation against us. But it's so good when there are white people who can call it out and say, no, that was racism. And especially in a time when we have a government who wants to really just get rid of, if they could just ban the word racism, they probably would.
Right.
But having that, being able to have those conversations are so important. And for him to be able to identify what is racism.
Absolutely. Yeah. And knowing his history, so he probably 2nd or 3rd grade, I know ancestry.com and all that stuff is kind of weird now, but back in the day when they first started, he wanted to know where his people came from. And I said, cool. So we did the whole spit test, and, he knows that his family was probably part of the slave trade because of where, his African roots are from. And so knowing that, and so staying knowledgeable on that and doing, we went to Memphis and we went to the Civil Rights Museum. We went to, and so keeping that education and keeping that, this is history and this is real. I'm not going to sugarcoat it for you. This is some of the experiences that your family experienced, the side that I don't have, that I'm not on. And so having those conversations also.
That's huge. What are some of the challenges you might not have expected ahead of time?
I think I expected a lot. I think where I am having the hardest time is racism from teachers. And I'm constantly like, is that because he's a boy? Is that because he's Black? Is that right? So some of that has been hard for me to identify because sometimes I do catch myself going back in my brain and saying, am I playing the race card for him right now? No, I'm pretty sure this is that. And then how many times he has been called the N-word. I knew that it would happen. But I thought when he was born, Obama was president, right? So I thought it wasn't all great and everything, but I didn't think that it would get as bad as it did. He went to a wrestling camp a few years ago in Iowa, and he just told me the other day, he said, Mom, there was one day when I got called the N-word 20 times. And I said, hard R? And he's like, yeah, hard R. I said, okay. And so that has really guided him to be like, I want to get out of the Midwest. He's looking at schools on the West Coast. I want to get out. I want to not be around. While we do live in a diverse school district, he wants to get out of the Midwest. And I'm like, yeah, do it. I totally get it.
Yeah, I can't imagine. And even for him to count how many times,
right,
it shows you that it was definitely something that hurt or impacted him.
Absolutely.
One of the things that I've loved seeing is you guys have traveled all over the world together. About approximately, I don't know if you've counted how many countries you guys have been to, but do you know approximately?
Probably just 3 or 4 together.
Yeah, because I've seen you guys just gone, and really just having that good time one-on-one, which is so important. And I've had those conversations with parents that you got to have that one-on-one time with each kid, right. And because they just need that one-on-one time. And I know that it can be a challenge for kids when there was a period of time when it was just you and him. And
Right.
now there's a whole family there and he doesn't have as much one-on-one time, but you are so intentional on just having that one-on-one time, taking these trips with him, different places, so that you guys have that bonding time.
Yeah. And actually, two of those trips that we've taken, so his biological dad has, I always like to say we have 4 kids that we know of, and he's one of them. And one of his biological sisters lives in Croatia. She's Croatian. So her mom got pregnant when she was over here in the States doing Peace Corps, AmeriCorps or something. And so 2 of those trips have been to Croatia to meet his biological sister. And so that has been, I am honored, and I very much recognize the privilege that we have to be able to travel to Croatia to see his sister. And I remind him of that. Like, not everybody gets to travel and meet their, across the ocean and meet biological people. But the first time they met, oh my gosh, they look identical. It's like looking in him. I mean, it was such a cool experience since he doesn't have any biological children for me. He's my only, my only biological son. And so seeing that experience was just like, yeah, like, this is your blood. This is your sister. Like, that was a cool experience.
Wow. I can only imagine. Yeah, I was 20 years old with 2 children when I first got on an airplane.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Just growing up in South Central Los Angeles, being raised by my grandmother who was disabled, we weren't going anywhere.
Not going anywhere. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's so beautiful for you to be able to take him,
Mm-hmm.
and then also to be able to have those conversations about privilege,
Mm-hmm.
because it is definitely a privilege and a benefit. And people in other countries oftentimes don't have that privilege of coming here. And
Right.
especially when we have governmental systems that prevent people from different countries from coming here, even to get a visa is an application process that not everyone can get through.
No.
So good that he's been able to have those experiences, and that you have been so intentional on keeping him connected to his other family.
Right.
And that is already commendable, because we see that regardless of race or socioeconomic status, oftentimes for someone to be so intentional to make sure that he stays connected with other parts of his family is huge.
Right.
How did you come about that decision?
Because while he has a somewhat relationship with his biological father, he has always said, like, like, I have a dad, my husband, like, he's my dad, like, I don't need that, but I want to know my siblings. I want to meet my siblings. So he's met 2 out of the 3 of his siblings. And so that has just, like, okay, that's a need that you want to have. And again, we have the privilege that we can help you, support that need. So he met one of his siblings in Chicago when we kind of went and visited his grandma, and then Croatia, like I said, a couple times. And, hearing what he needs to feel his identity and saying, okay, we can make that happen.
I love it. And now, how did you go about building the open line of communication? Because a lot of parents have a hard time just communicating with their kids or getting the information out of their kids. And honestly, even my grandson, as I'm trying to talk to, he's 6. And I'm like, how was school today? And he's like, fine. What did you learn? Nothing. Nothing? You in school all day? You learn nothing? We need to get you a new school. And just pulling the teeth to get the information out of him. But you've built such an open conversation, communication with your son. It's beautiful to see.
Yeah. Very intentional. I have to say that I think a lot of it came from my dad. So when I was a single mom, even right when I first got married, my dad and my son spent a ton of time together. And his intentionality of asking, questions, and, instead of saying, like, how was your day today? Like, what was one kind thing you did today? Right. And so kind of taking the guidance from my dad as like a young mom and seeing how, because my dad and I have had a very open, communication relationship. And so kind of seeing that modeled and being like, oh, okay. But then also we've never not talked about who he is. Right. Like, so some people have said, like, well, when did you tell him that, Doug adopted him? Or when did you tell him that, like, it's never not been part of his life. And so I think that is something that he doesn't quite understand, because he has some friends who, you know, have been adopted or in similar situations as him with a white mom, and then, you know, a biological dad who's not in the picture, and they very much don't talk about it. They're like, I don't know anything about it. We don't talk about it. And that's such a weird concept to us, because we've always been so, like, we've always talked about his biological father by first name. Like, hey, Jamal's going to do this. Jamal's going to do this. Jamal loves you. He just can't be in your life right now. Like, we've always had that. And so it's a weird concept to us to be like, well, we haven't talked about it, so we don't. It's just always been part of the conversation.
Yeah. Now, your husband has 2 daughters also,
Correct.
right? How has that been blending the family?
Yeah, it's so they were all 3 really little. So my son was 4 when we got married, and the girls were 2. So they're siblings, right? And so I think that has been easy-ish. However, when you get into, so they go to a completely different school district than my son. And so helping them understand that their brother is Black, right? Like, their brother is seen as that. And so when your friends are jokingly, you know, saying racist jokes or jokingly saying the N-word, like, that's not really a joke. Like, look at your brother. And so that has been more of the learning curve, because again, he's always been in their life. They don't really know a life without him. But now getting to the age where they need to stand up, I think we've been able to have some open conversations around that.
What, tell me more, like, how do you lead those conversations?
So a lot of it is like, how would you feel if someone said that to your brother? Right? Like, here's the history of what that word means, right? So teaching them a lot of history, like, white people use that word as a way to, you know, demoralize and to really look down on Black people. Like, how would that make you feel if someone said that to your brother or was standing right? And it starts to like, starts to kind of, I wouldn't like that. Like, why would they say that about Ahmad? Right? Like, and so having those conversations, like putting it into like their first person, but then also teaching history, right? So like, here's what that word actually means. I know that y'all friends are saying it as a joke. It's not really a joke, because here's the history of it. And providing that education that you may or may not have had yet in high school or middle school.
Yeah. Now, what was your upbringing like? Because how did you get to this point of even being open to dating and marrying and having a child with a Black man? And how was your family accepting of that? And, you know, what was your upbringing like?
Yeah, so both my parents are ordained ministers, and I grew up in a small town in Iowa. But when I was growing up in Iowa, like, I mostly dated people of not white backgrounds, right? So Indian people, or my longtime boyfriend was biracial in high school. And it has never been an issue with my parents. It actually was never even an issue with my grandparents, right? Now, we needed to teach them, you know, the appropriate word, like what you said in the 1950s might not be the word you use in the early 2000s, but being able to learn from that. And I do remember a story that my dad often would tell. He doesn't really tell it anymore, but when I first started dating my longtime boyfriend, who was, you know, biracial, but a Black man in America, and one of the older white women came up to him and said, "How can you let her date him? He's Black. You can't do that." And he said, "If he loves my daughter and treats her right, why does it matter?" And from that, you know, like, that's just the type of family that I grew up in. And so just, you know, that has just always kind of been who I am. I also have, it's up there. I have one of my very favorite baby dolls is a little Black baby doll. And you press her heart and she says, "I love you. I love you." And my mom remembers getting that for me when I was like 4, right? Like, that was the one baby doll I wanted. She was like, "Cool, you're going to play with it." And it's still on, you know, on my desk here at work. So they've never squashed it, I guess.
That's interesting, because you don't get that where you can, I feel the genuineness, right? And I don't always feel that from people. Is not a whole lot of people that I've built trust with where I'm like, I feel comfortable talking to this person, but you're one of those people. But you can tell it's who you are. It's not who you're trying to be. It
Right.
is who you are, is a welcoming person, and it's not that it's something that it's not something you code switch with. Like, well, when I'm around these people, I'm accepting, and when I'm around those people, I'm a different way. You can feel that this is who you are.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times it does come from childhood,
Mm-hmm.
and it's so good that you had parents who were the open and
Uh-huh.
like, all I care about is that somebody loves my daughter, and that is most important. And
Right.
we be much better off as a nation if most people had that viewpoint.
Yes,
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So what are some of Ahmad's interests? Like, what is he? I heard you say he went to wrestling camp,
Yeah.
and what were some of his other interests?
Yeah, so he's really into Brazilian jiu-jitsu right now. So that is kind of a martial art. So it's a type of martial art, and this is his passion. Like he even once we're looking at schools in San Diego because San Diego has some of the best jiu-jitsu gyms, martial art gyms, and so he's been doing it for the last 4 years. He did go to wrestling camp, kind of fell off with that. He didn't love the coach, and so he decided to get into this. And the gym he's here in our hometown is just amazing. He's rolling with like 50-year-old men, but they have taken him under his wing. The last tournament he was in, he got 2 gold medals. Like he just really,
Wow.
really loves that martial art. And it teaches so I learned this yesterday. It's kind of known as the chess of martial arts. So it's very
Mm,
much cognitive. It's very much focus and all of that. And so that's really what he's into right now. He is constantly, editing BJJ videos, or he's watching, tutorials, or he's at the gym. And so that's really his passion right now.
nice. Now, how's it feel knowing that he's about to be 18,
Oh,
going away to college?
I just hope that I have taught him all the things I can, and that he knows how to protect himself. And so that's kind of probably 6 months ago when we started to look like where are we going to look at schools and stuff. He said, Mom, you're going to have such a hard time with me going away. I said, yeah, you're right. Like we are definitely connected. Like I will have a hard time. He said, but this is what you've been preparing me for. This is the whole point of you parenting me. And I said, absolutely. So all of those things that I'm trying to teach you, like even how to respond to an email, like I'm preparing you to be a successful adult. And so I'm glad that you see that. 100% will be hard, but you're taking in a lot of stuff and you're learning.
That's so good. What advice would you have for other parents who are in that similar situation and may not have prepared their kids so well to live on their own? What are some of the things that crash course? You got to make sure you do these things.
Yeah, well, if you are raising a black son, or a black person, you better be telling them to mind their P's and Q's, right? Like every single thing that you do is being judged. When you get pulled over, you follow what you need to do when you get pulled over. Never let your hands, right? Like all of those things that they teach you. Tell them what you're doing. Make sure you already have your ID out. All of those things. I think that's the biggest thing that I am the most worried about is his safety.
Mhm.
He can figure everything else out, but like when you're walking down the street and you feel someone following you, be aware, right? Like
Yeah.
be aware of your surroundings. And so teaching people how to be aware of their surroundings and how others perceive you, whether it's who you actually are or not, you have to know what other people see when they see you initially. And that's a conversation we have a lot, like especially when we travel. We often say, what do you think people think when they see us together? Because like I'm 5'1", he's 6 foot, right? Like we kind of look alike. I kind of look young. He kind of looks old. Like, what do you know? And so having those conversations just help people be aware and know how people perceive them and be honest about it. Don't try to sugarcoat it, right? Sometimes
Yeah.
I say people may see you as, a weed dealer, right? People may see you as someone who smokes weed to wake up and to go to sleep because of how you look. You need to be aware of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those are those assumptions. And I'm sure if people are coming up from behind, they think you're a couple, not mom and son.
Right.
So of course that's going to be the viewpoint. And even coming forward, they will, because you do look very young. And so I can imagine folks being like, those two. But that safety thing and awareness is so important. I think for everybody of any age, is you have to be aware of what's happening around you, because if
Yeah,
you're not, you could be in danger.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. What are some other challenges you may have had, or surprisingly good experiences? I think that's where I really would like to go.
Yeah.
What are some surprisingly good experiences that you've had?
I think the surprisingly good experiences are because we have such good open communication. He's open with me when he has questions, right? And so I think I saw you post something, Kalisha, about like if you don't, or maybe it was on one of your last podcasts, if you kind of shut your kids down or don't let them ask you questions, they're never going to come to you with questions. And I've completely the opposite. Like, ask me anything. And if you don't ask me, I'm going to tell you anyways, and I'm going to make it awkward. So ask me. And so kind of that's the like nice surprising thing of having such open communication. And he knows that I know history, right? Like I know, the history of slavery. I know the history of that. I might not be able to experience it as a Black person, but I can acknowledge that I can talk about it and I can give you the guidance for that. And so the surprising thing is the open communication, the conversations, the things that come up when he's, at 11 o'clock right before bed and just wants to talk, like those types of things. That has been, just great conversations of like life. And because we've built that open communication, we can have those conversations. I also think some of the other surprises is when you have your community, your village, like I like to call it my village, that they really are there for you, right? And you got to intentionally build that village, that they will show up for you and they will have your back 100%. But you also have to make sure that you're not just using people because of their skin color or because of their experience. That's the thing that really rubs me the wrong way when I see, especially white women asking, usually Black women or Black men, like, well, how do you do this? Or how do you do this? When they have no other context for them. I'm like, hold on, who are you to be asking that? Like, stop. And so the surprising piece is kind of the village that we've built, which has been really nice.
Having that reciprocal relationship.
Yeah.
Now, who had the talk with him about sex? Was it you or your husband, or both?
I think we both did. Again, that is one of those things that has like body changing and those types of things. We have never like sat down and been like birds and bees. It's just been a conversation. But I think when he hit puberty, my husband definitely like talked about like your changing body. And but also, so I'm in the field of prevention. So all I do is work with teens, and sometimes there are condoms like all over my living room because I'm packing bags and stuff. So it's also just been one of those things like, hey, you got to use these if you don't want to have kids, right? Like, and there's female condoms, and and so it's always just been out there. But I think like the puberty talk, for sure, my husband did, because my son was way too awkward for me to do
it. That's funny.
Yeah.
What have you guys had conversations about, like sexuality and gender and things like that? Because there's a lot of conversations about that we see in the news and things like that. Even with our government and like passports, so there's a lot of conversations about that.
Yeah. So yeah. And again, that's one of those things that we've always kind of talked about. Like my kids and even my nieces and nephews even joke like, like Aunt Annie is going to love you no matter who you bring home. You can bring home a girl or a boy. It doesn't matter. Right. Like that's one of those things that's been like my mantra, like, oh, do you have a girlfriend or a boyfriend? It doesn't matter. We're going to love you no matter what. And so he is very aware of that, and finally said to me a couple years ago, Mom, I like girls. You can stop saying that. I'm like, hey, but it's okay. Like, if you want to like a boy, that's okay too. And so, yeah, we definitely have had that conversation. A lot of my adult friends are in the LGBTQ community. Some are trans. And so, like, he just kind of, again, what's the community I have chosen to be friends with has kind of been built into his own community. And so, yeah, we have that conversation. And, he being in high school, he's like, oh, yeah, like that person changed their name and that person is now a boy, like it just is. It's never been something to necessarily have, like a teaching moment about. Now, what has happened is his friends who know I'm very, very liberal have come to the house and started saying things to the point of sometimes we have said, if you continue to say that, you are no longer welcome in my house. Like, where I stand, right? Like, and so some of those conversations, but for my son, he hasn't had, he gets it.
Yeah, that's so good. And how involved has your son been in like what's going on politically in the country? He's going to be registering to vote in a year, and so like how have those conversations gone?
Yeah, well, I think with TikTok, he stays way more up to date than I ever realized until the last couple of weeks. Like, he knows a lot. Like, he'll be like, Mom, what do you think about this? And I'll be like, what are you talking about? He's like, well, this and this and this happened. And I'll be like, oh, okay. And so, yeah, I don't think that he would ever like go protest. I don't think that he would ever, go to a rally. However, he is very knowledgeable and very up to date, probably more than I am at some points, on what is happening. And teenagers make jokes about it, but he's just like appalled, right? Like, he very much has grown up in a liberal household. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now, what would you say your experience has been like? There's always the conversations about how Black people cook versus how white people cook, and the seasonings and the raisins in the potato salad. Like, what has been your experience?
That is such a funny question, because he cooked all his own meals and probably has for the past 3 or 4 years. And at sometimes I'll be like, hey, like I can cook that for you. He's like, Mom, no. You cook like a white person. I'm like, I am a white person. He's like, no, you put salt on it. That's all you put on the chicken is butter and salt. Like, no, you cannot cook my food. So he definitely has, again, TikTok has probably guided him some of that. Before he started cooking, we had no spices. Like, you're right, I put butter on chicken and call it good. So now we have like 2 full spice racks, all of the things he uses. He tells me what to get for his spices. I mean, he is cooking up a meal every night for himself only, not anyone else. But yeah, I think that has been the funniest, I think, because he, jokes about it like, Mom, you cook such like a white person, like, God, put something on it. And I'm like, okay, sorry. Like, and so he definitely has taken on the cooking for himself.
That is hilarious. I was not expecting that, but I was like, look, let's go and throw the question out there and see what happens. But that's so good. Does he know what he wants to major in school, or?
Yeah, he's looking at a very specific thing. He's always wanted to do anthropology, so history, study of that, but he's gotten more into the history of sports. So it's called sports anthropology. And he can do, he really wants to stay in the BJJ field, the jiu-jitsu field, and, do sports analytics or, do that type of stuff. So that's kind of his goal right now. But he's wanted to do anthropology probably the whole time he's been in high school. So most of the schools we're looking at focus on anthropology on the West Coast. So that's kind of his 2 stipulations.
That's interesting. Is he considering UCLA?
We didn't look at UCLA. We looked at USC.
Yeah, I went to USC. UCLA had a better history department. I double majored in history and political science. Yeah. And I remember UCLA was ranked higher than USC was. But USC is really good in research and things like that. Yeah. So I think they have a decent, I don't know about their sports, like sports medicine or anything like that. Right. But I do know they had a huge geriatrics department
Oh, that's weird.
when I left. Yeah, very interesting. They're doing a whole lot of research on people getting old, and I was okay. And what else? I think before I left USC, they were talking a lot about like occupational therapy was
Oh,
the biggest thing, but I left in 2002,
yeah.
so
Yeah.
a long time ago. So much has changed. What are your hopes for the future?
Um, for the future, I hope that specifically for Ahmad, that he just finds his passion and his people. I keep telling him your friends in high school will probably not be your friends in life. And so I just hope that he finds his niche, right? And that he, you know, he doesn't have to stay in the Midwest. I just want him to be successful in whatever success means for him. It doesn't mean he needs to, have a expensive job or a rich job or anything, but find his people. I think that's the biggest thing that he's missing right now. And I don't even mean racial. I mean like people who enjoy the same things as him. I think that's really hard for him right now with a lot of high schoolers, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have a very small amount of people to choose from,
mm-hmm.
which he has great friends. But I think that if he could find his people, that is my biggest hope, is that he finds success however he wants to define it.
Yeah, that's so good. I don't know. I don't even know where else to go with the conversation. You've been so helpful in helping me understand more. Is there anything that I missed that you're like, I was expecting Kalisha to ask me about this?
No, not really. I just think the biggest thing I can say, and I think it supports one of your last episodes, is be completely open. Like, there's no reason to hide anything. There's no reason for me to not tell him about his biological dad. There's no reason for me to keep him from his, his Black grandma, right? There's no reason to keep that. Like yes, I had a history with his biological father. Yes, we are no longer together, and there's a reason for that. And yes, it was really stressful while that was happening, but that doesn't mean that it should impact him. And so making sure to just be completely open and have those open conversations, so that if you do have a child who doesn't share your skin tone and they are called a derogatory term, they feel comfortable telling you that and processing it with you. I think that is the biggest piece, is just be open and non-judging. You might judge in your head, but don't tell them you're judging, right? Like, and the non-judging piece, so that they do feel as if they can talk to you about anything.
I love that so much. And I just think that you've done a great job. And I remember years ago, I mean, your son was probably like 4 or 5 or 6, somewhere very young, where you were like, I'm open to if he wants a girlfriend or a boyfriend, it doesn't matter to me. And I was like, that's a weird thing to say with your baby so little, but because you have been just fully immersed in life of, I'm not discriminating against anybody. And the more I think that we grow intellectually, we get to that point. I took some classes on the psychology of gender, and they were talking about how gender is on a spectrum, and most people don't fit squarely in one or the other. There's some variations based on the amount of testosterone in their bodies and different things like that. And I was like, wow, it just enlightened me so much. And I felt so behind on like understanding, but I was able to catch up through that. But we live in a country that's not open to even learning most of the time, not open to learning about differences.
Right. I think that speaks volumes to you, right? Because when we knew each other, you were very much Christian, right? Like, and I don't know how to say that like politically correct, but right, like very much a different person. Not good, not bad, just a different person. And I think that speaks volumes to you and to anyone who is willing to educate themselves, be open to learning and reflecting. I think that's one of the biggest pieces that I value as an adult, is like, I'm open to learning. I'm open to reflecting. I'm open to changing my views. But I do want everyone to feel love, right? And so like that is the core of where I'm coming from.
Oh yeah, I call myself a super Christian now when I talk about that period of time, I used to be a super Christian. But I know I offended, hopefully you're not one of those people. I offended a lot of people during that time because, and stuff that I didn't even remember, but I ended up having my own little apology tour, I felt like, because there was a guy I remember. Well, first, my last principal job, my assistant principal was somebody from Teach for America. We had gone through court together in 2006, and I had offended her back then. And now this is 2016. And
she's still remembering.
And so as we're sitting there catching up, she's giving me the rundown on what to know about the school. I'm taking over during Christmas time. And she was like, and we have history, right? I was like, tell me what I did. just tell me, and so now she's crying, I'm crying. I'm like, I'm not that same person. And she was like, I know a lot's changed in 10 years and none of us are the same. I was 30 when I started Teach for America. And then I was 40 when I came there. So I was a very different person. I think I was 41 when I came there, but I was a different person at that time. But I was apologizing for the things that I had done and the things that I said that had hurt people prior. And then there was another guy who had gone through the court with me in 2006 as well, who was gay. And I was like, I don't even remember. At that time, everybody got all Bible all the time for me.
Right.
And it didn't matter who you were, and it wasn't personal, but it still was personal to them because they were on the receiving end of it. Yep. And I remember seeing him at one of our trainings. And as soon as I did, I gave him this huge hug. And then at lunchtime, I was like, we got to talk, and I pulled him over and I started talking to him. He said, crying now about it. And he said, when you hugged me, I could tell you were a different person. And just
that feels so good. Yeah.
Just the level of forgiveness that some people had. And then there's some people who didn't have that. Like I have a cousin who was like, you told me I was going to hell. And I was like, 15 years ago? Like, we're at my aunt's funeral and I'm like, why are you acting funny towards me? Because you told me I was going to hell years ago. And I was like, oh my God. Well, first of all, I'm sorry. I don't even believe that anymore. My beliefs have changed significantly since then. Right. And I'm sorry I did that to you. And I'm sorry I hurt you. It wasn't personal. And I didn't even remember that I even had that conversation with her. Right. So, but it's so important that we do go back and, talk about the things that we know that we've done that has hurt people in the past. And I feel like we have a hard time right now in this country doing that. There's so many people who know that they've hurt somebody. They change their mind and they'll just quietly go a different direction. They won't go back and try to right their wrongs. They won't go back and say, if I offended you, I'm sorry. And it's not even just if I've offended you. I know that I've offended some people. Right. And I have to go back to the people that I know that I offended and make those things right. And then also let everybody know that I did this thing wrong. And I'm very big on, if I offended you in public, I need to apologize in public. I'm not going to apologize privately for something I did publicly that hurt you, because I want folks to know when I'm wrong about something. But thank you for mentioning that, because I know the time periods.
Right.
Yeah. I know the time periods. Man.
But I think that very much shows, kind of goes into the conversation we've had today. Like, if you are, a person who is raising someone who isn't the same skin tone as you, and you've had conversations in the past, or you've had views in the past, you can change, right? Like, you can right the wrong, whatever that might mean, right? But you can change. Educate yourself. Don't ask the community you're trying to, fit into to educate you. Do your own work. What I like to say is, and I'm sure lots of people say it, don't, rely on Black and brown people to tell you about how to be Black and brown, right? Like, the people who have put out information, learn, right? But don't just go up to Black and brown people on the street and be like, tell me what it is to be you. No. Yeah. That's not learning and growing. That's possibly traumatizing someone. So yeah.
Yeah, it could be. I know that I'm always open to sharing, especially if somebody's willing to learn. And I've learned that about, like, for example, Spanish speaking people. If I'm trying to speak Spanish, They're
Right.
very welcoming with that. Like, oh, let me help you with that, you know? But I've been around a lot of people when Spanish speaking people are trying their best to speak English who are like, you don't understand English. And the negativity that's caused me to not feel comfortable speaking Spanish around Spanish speaking people because I know this much.
Right.
But I've always found 100% of the time they're welcoming and they want me to try more than they're offended that I don't know their language.
Right.
You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think that one of the things that you said that really stood out to me is that, you know, we do have a responsibility to do our homework, to know how to be less offensive, and or how not to offend somebody. We do have that responsibility, whoever we are,
Right.
to try our best to be welcoming. And what I love about you is that you didn't try to become Black to be welcoming. You didn't try to become Black because you have a Black son. You know, you ain't like, hey sis, like you're not doing those things because but we don't like that.
Right.
Well, not gonna speak for everybody, but a lot of Black people, we don't like it when folks are like, hey girl, and we're like, would you hey girl me if I were white? Probably not. So, but you don't do that, and you're perfectly comfortable being a white person. You know, I remember our vice president said, you no longer have to apologize for being white. I was like, I've never known anybody who felt like they needed to apologize for being white.
Right.
Is who they are. But at the same time, you didn't try to become Black because you were raising a Black son. You didn't try to act Black because you were raising a Black son.
Right.
You're allowing him to be who he is and you're being who you are, and we can coexist.
Right. And I think some of the other things, I've never tried to, you know, as you're saying, quote unquote, become Black, but I do understand code switching. I do understand, you know, African American English. Like if he comes to me and says, hey, someone said this to me, what does this mean? I know it. I just don't use it in my vocabulary, right? Like I have become educated and I, you know, and I can share that with him.
Yep. And it doesn't have to be something that's offensive, which is a beautiful thing.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
Well, thank you so much for taking this time to talk with me. I have thoroughly enjoyed it.
Fun. Yeah.
Yes. And we got to catch up more often. I got to find some time. You live in Illinois still, right?
Yep.
Yeah. And so I definitely got to get a chance to come out there. How far are you from Chicago?
Like 2 hours, not that far. Yeah.
Yeah, my dad's from the south side of Chicago.
Yeah, that's where Ahmad's family's from too. Yep. So we go to the south side. I try to go every 6 months to see them, give or take. So yeah.
That is so good. That is so ambitious too.
Yep.
Yeah. But thank you so much. I appreciate you taking the time to just share with me and my community about what your experience has been like being a white woman who's raising a Black man. Oh my gosh.
I know.
In America at this specific time in America.
Ooh, yeah.
Yeah. And looking at history, I'm like, I don't even know what's a better time to be in, but this one, it feels horrible right now.
It does.
And not even just based on race. It's a lot that feels uncomfortable right now, but you've been handling it so well, and keeping that open line of communication, I'm sure, has made it an easier move for yourself, for your son, and for your family. And so I appreciate you taking the time to talk with me.
Thank you. It's been fun.
Yeah. Well, have a great rest of your day. I know you're at work.
Yeah. Thank you. Have a good one.
Thank you.
Bye.
So this has been another episode of the Don't Screw Up Your Kids podcast. If you haven't done so yet, please like this episode. Please subscribe to my channel, and I look forward to seeing you next time.